Right, this bike isn't going to ride itself. When it comes to cycling tips and tricks, if you were to ask 100 different cyclists, you'd probably get 100 different sets of answers. So I thought I would just share my top 10 with you now. These are by no means definitive, but instead they're based on my own personal meandering experience. My first tip is arguably going to be my most controversial, and that is wear a crash helmet. Now, I know that many people believe that wearing a crash helmet doesn't actually contribute anything to cycling safety, but I don't share that opinion. I know from bitter personal experience that on the rare occasions that I have crashed, one of the few things I do remember is the sound of my head hitting the ground and it being protected by my crash helmet. Fortunately, here in the UK and in the US, we don't have to wear one by law, so it's all personal choice. But like I say, I personally always wear one. My next tip is also to do with cycling safety. So if you're riding along a road and you're approaching a junction and there's a car at that junction, always try to look the driver in the eye. That way you know that they've seen you, you've seen them, and the chances of them pulling out on you are greatly reduced. My next tip is always stop at red lights. They're not there for fun, they're not there for decoration, they're there to stop cars and bikes and pedestrians from running into each other. If you jump a red light, you run the risk of a hunk of metal smashing into you or you smashing into a pedestrian, and quite frankly, you'd have no one to blame except yourself. It's not big, it's not clever, just don't do it. Next, I would suggest not listening to music on headphones while you cycle. Now, I used to do this for many years, and while it's fantastic, it's all epic and soundtracky, you can't hear the traffic behind you. And I had a pretty nasty scare one day, and that instantly put me off. Next, I would suggest joining a club. Riding with other people is great fun. Not only will it help you ride further and faster, but you can also tap into a wealth of communal experience. It's going to sound like a dreadful cliche, but if you look after your bike will look after you. Now, we're not talking major mechanical work here, we're just talking basic maintenance. So things like adjusting brakes, adjusting gears, fixing punctures, and even just cleaning. If you don't know how to do any of this, then luckily I've got a load of films that show you how to do it. When you finish your ride, just as you're approaching home, I would suggest that you change gear so that your chain is on the smallest cog on the rear sprocket. Because traditional cable gear systems rely on tension for the accuracy of their shifts, anything that you can do to release that tension will prevent stretch and mean that you won't have to keep tuning them up every 5 minutes. It's a great idea to have a cycling computer, and if you're going to have one, I would thoroughly recommend that you get a GPS one with cadence. You'll have great fun looking at the maps later on, and the cadence function will help you pedal much more efficiently. And if you do buy a GPS cycling computer, why not join Strava? It's completely free and you have access to a global community of like-minded cyclists. And finally, always try and cycle with a goal in mind. Now that goal can be anything: to go out and have fun, to go out and ride a certain amount of kilometres, to go out and ride at a certain speed. Whatever the goal, it will just help you to focus and you'll enjoy the ride much more. The clock is definitely ticking for my Mallorca trip. At the moment, I've got 8 months before I'm due to fly out. So the training that I've been doing are relatively short routes, roughly 30 kilometres on the local roads around here. But very soon I will have to start extending that. So with that in mind, what I've done, I've signed up for the Prudential London 100 ride. As many of you will know, this is a ride in and around London. It's roughly 100 miles long and takes place at the end of June. Now, it takes in all of the iconic London landmarks, and then plus when you get out to the Surrey countryside, you do things like Box Hill. Unfortunately, this isn't like any normal sportive where you sign up and you get an automatic place. You have to enter a ballot and then you hear if you're successful later on. I've applied several times in the past to do this ride and not been successful, so hopefully this year I will. But if I'm not, what I will do is go out roughly at the same time and do an independent 100-mile ride of my own. I've only ever ridden 2 centuries in the past. One was in 2006 and then the other was in 2015. And I think both times I seriously underestimated it. Firstly, I didn't get the routes right, so I ended up having to add on an extra couple of kilometres at the end when I was already tired, which was probably the hardest things I've ever done on a bike. Just summoning up the energy when you're really tired to do another 4 kilometres or so, that takes some doing. So I won't be making the mistake of underestimating a 100-mile route next time. If I do have to do one independently, I'll make things easy on myself and make 100% certain that I have the route 100% correct. So it's definitely 100 miles that I'm riding, not 95 miles and then I have to stick another few on the end. I'll also make sure that I'm eating and drinking enough on the bike, and then I'll also try and ride with somebody else. Riding with other people is always much easier. Just chatting to them kind of takes your mind off how tired you are, and plus if you get tired you can then also just sit on their wheel and draft a little bit. The morning after the last century I rode back in 2015, I felt absolutely shattered. I was tired and I was saddle sore. But one of the mistakes I made was not getting back on the bike as soon as possible. I know now that no matter how sore and how tired you feel, that soon passes when you just sit on the bike for a couple of kilometres and go out for a short, easy recovery ride. So wish me luck, not just for being able to ride my next century, but for being successful in the ballot for the London 100 to be able to do so. Thanks for watching.